Hey, everybody. We've had huge technical difficulties. Is Mars in retrograde? Oh no, now Melissa's gone. No. We've had huge techie issues with my camera. It's my fault. I'm the problem child. Did not get my camera going. So welcome. We're gonna really buzz through this because we had so many problems and we're starting late. So yeah. So we're going to get started. Welcome to Fempreneur True Confessions.
Thank you for showing up. Real quick, I'm Laura Brown. I'm the owner of ODA Virtual Assistant. And we help small businesses help with their staffing and help them grow and really empower them in delegation and work and strategy.
Yep. And I'm Angelique, and I head Lady Powerhouse Solutions. I'm trying to talk too fast. Later Powerhouse Solutions is a heart-centered approach to offering project and event management for women entrepreneurs on fire, lighten up their world with their passion, their drive, they're achieving their missions, and we help them do that in the most authentic way possible.
Wonderful. And together we are Fempreneur True Confessions podcast. And our mission is to empower women in business and life to live authentically and support each other instead of competing with each other. So to model this, we authentically through our business and personal relationships to empower other women to do the same.
Right. So really this podcast is about normalizing struggle because it is normal to struggle. And I think one thing we failed to mention in the past, and I want to bring it up now, is that that's how this podcast came about, is we're looking for ways to support each other, and we're not finding other people, quote unquote, struggling. We're not finding other female entrepreneurs going, oh man, I really struggle with this, and this is how I got through it, or this is how I completely failed and I had to get help or whatever. So we're trying to normalize what it looks like when women succeeded at supporting each other, sharing, those struggles, building up each other, and, just creating that sisterhood that believes in abundance mindset, sharing our struggles, helping each other rise to our highest potential.
Right. Exactly. Wonderful. All right. So everyone, I would love to introduce you here. We have Melissa Whiteford St. Clair, and she is a strategic partner for women to help them grow personally and professionally, empowering amazing women and solopreneurs by helping them get better organized through Paper Chaser Biz as a professional virtual assistant and through writing books and tools to build advocates for social justice through White Girl Advocacy.
Welcome, Melissa.
Welcome.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here. And I was so happy when you said we were going to buzz right along. So
I knew you were going to work in that bee thing eventually, right? Absolutely. So, one of the topics that, Melissa, that you wanted to talk about was this journey from employee to entrepreneur. So let's get to it. Tell us about the struggle that brought you to that decision or whatever that was.
Absolutely. Yeah, happy to share. So I am a military spouse. My husband is a United States Marine Corps retired veteran.
Thank you for your service.
Oh, thank you for your support. So knowing that, my resume was going to look different because I could not sustain employment in one place for 10, 20 years. Mm-hmm. I wanted to thrive professionally alongside my service member and knew I would be moving. And I was working at the local chamber and, inspired by the entrepreneurs I was surrounded by. And somehow the virtual assistant industry came across my radar and I thought, I could do that. I could take my executive assistant, my business management, and try to, see what the technology is like around that. So I did, and I took a big leap and left the chamber and became a member instead of an employee. and started working with an agency that I was already working with, a nonprofit that revolved around community health, which is important to me. And so they took a big leap because it was a new concept back in 2006 and before, how to use workers remotely. So I ended up working with that organization until it dissolved in, 2014 or something. So almost like 8-10 years working with them. So.
Oh. So the struggle sounds like it was like creating this consistency across your quote unquote work experience.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yes. So wanting that
So
consistent income and the freedom and the flexibility, though, to be able to move around with my, profession. So it became an ideal portable career. And I hear my cat coming to deliver a little toy in the background.
We embrace the animals on this show.
Oh my gosh.
Sure.
That's hilarious. That's hilarious. I love it. So I think that there are probably some other women. There's plenty of military wives out there, right? And that's why I say thank you for your service, Melissa, not just your husband, but you, because my mom was in the military. My stepdad was in the military. And when he retired, they also gave her, commendation and award and appreciation because she did support him and what he did. And she's insistent.
Sorry.
Love it.
She's bringing reinforcement, so I just got a little red mouse.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's hilarious. Does she just want to be on camera? Because we're cool with that.
I don't know.
Yeah. So Melissa, with that, did you find that support was much harder because virtual wasn't really a thing back then? Most women were going into the workforce and stuff. So did you find it even harder to find that kind of support you needed?
I did. So, back then there were no exclusive and specific training programs to become a virtual assistant, which we know that there are wonderful opportunities for that today. So I really, really had to lean on my professional network and the Small Business Center at Coastal Carolina Community College, where we were stationed when I started my business, was just the best support for small business owners, helping from contemplation to ribbon cutting and through the lifespan of your business for free. So really super helpful in learning all the things that you need to become an entrepreneur and start your own business, and then think about moving your business every time you relocate on new orders. So that's another compounded struggle.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. That is
So
wonderful.
Go ahead, Laura.
No, I was just saying it's wonderful that you were able to find that support, but realizing that, this online version of work has been around for a lot longer than most people really think about. Everyone thinks COVID and that was the big push, obviously, but knowing that there are pioneers long before this that have been working through all the challenges of this long before this time. Is really, it makes it helps understand why this was a much easier transition when COVID hit and could be accomplished in a much better way. So,
and that's a really good point, because I remember, and I think I'd have to go back and look at my LinkedIn profile, honestly, but I started quote unquote what we call telecommuting back in the 90s, working from home part of the time. Wow. And so as soon as the internet came online, there were people who were in that technology space that were already like, okay, now we can do this, this, and this. So I've been working online and as a independent contractor since the 90s. So Melissa, talk about once you get your business up and running, you're a small business yourself. So what kind of struggles did you have, and where did you find the support that you needed?
So in the startup, again, leaning on the Small Business Center and my professional network, because really the startup is the same. A lot of the elements are the same. The basics are the same. But just going to each of those at the time places like the Register of Deeds to get your business name, and then moving over to the tax office to, present your business license and things like that. So all of that had to be done kind of legwork, literally legwork, instead of processing everything online. So just doing the due diligence. And I created early on a checklist. So it would be easier for other military spouses that were coming into my area to know what the requirements would be or the steps would be for setting up a small business and an online business in the area. So becoming an advocate through like the National Military Spouse Network, which I'm still active in, to bring that focus even politically on military spouse employment and entrepreneurship. So
Awesome.
I love that.
I want to give us plenty of time to talk about one of your new projects, right? So when did
yes.
you and what was the catalyst that prompted you to start White Girl Advocacy?
Oh, golly. So the catalyst was George Floyd. And I will call his name boldly because his murder happened on my wedding anniversary. So now we are forever tied. And his murder started me on a path of getting educated as a white woman, not knowing the depth of racism and systemic racism. And I'm still learning, still on that journey. But what a journey it has been. So,
Cool. And so, Laura, I would love for you to share what we were talking about. You guys, we always talk before we go live, right? Okay, you know this. There's stuff going on in the green. There's always stuff going on in the green room. But talk a little bit about your response and reaction when you saw that post.
So for me, a little bit of background. I happen to come from a world where culture and integration and mixing and stuff like that was just second nature to us. I grew up in a pretty much an all Black community. I was raised by several very strong, independent Black women. I'm now involved in a mixed family. So for me, the Black community was more comfortable and more of what I knew, more so than in the white community, which is very strange. It's kind of flipped. And as a Jewish woman, there was a whole bunch of factors to that. So when I initially saw that, I was like, I wonder how that gets taken. Because for me, where I would think, what is it when you're advocating for white women? Because I'm like, there's a lot there in the privilege sense already. So when Melissa and I were talking and she explained where it came from, it was 100% on. And I do preface this with, I do know what path and what Melissa's been doing all this time and how she truly was coming from the heart with it and what it meant. But it's very interesting seeing it from two different worlds because, I've always, when you're doing the work and you come from one area and you're learning something is much different from if you grew up in the middle of seeing all of that and already knew it was a problem. So it was definitely very different. So I was super curious on her take and how she was bringing that around and how strategic that was. And it's pretty amazing. So I'm going to let you explain.
Thank you. And I appreciate that it's thought-provoking. It's intentional, and that's my word for this year. So White Girl Advocacy is actually about building a community of advocates of white women for social justice. So sharing what I'm learning, what wasn't taught to me in school, about our collective history of this nation, with other white women to empower them and educate them and build advocates and just be better neighbors, be better people, because we're all in this together. And that's kind of where I'm coming from with all of that.
Absolutely. Nice. I got chills. It
well,
makes me
I thought
happy.
it was
all teary-eyed.
interesting.
I'm sorry.
I thought it was really interesting because I too know you, Melissa, and know where you're coming from. So sorry, my calendar's talking to me, and I forgot to turn it off. So when I read that, I didn't miss a beat. I'm like, all right, because I think in this climate, this right now, when me as a white woman sees that, my instinct, my go-to reaction is, oh, I want to help advocate for, as a white woman. So I immediately connected with that. But there are going to be plenty, and we talked about this earlier, people who are going to be like, oh, she's advocating for white women. Nobody's advocating for us, right? Not that nobody is, but because there's plenty of feminist groups out there and women that need, and marginalized groups that need to be advocated for. So I'm totally not dissing that, but it was kind of like, oh, is that kind of like reverse psychology? Are we trying to get them to click because they are interested in advocating for white women, so that we can educate them that there's also another group that we need to advocate for? And I think, I don't know about you, but I found that the correlation between the feminist movement and the women's right to vote and the abolition of the slavery. And I don't know how much, and we can't get into it because there's just not enough time, but the similarities and also the incongruity between, because women, I don't know how much history you know, and I could be not getting all of this right either. So anyone who's listening to this, if I get anything wrong, feel free to call me out. But there was this concept, or this, what's the word I'm looking for? This background, this idea that if we gave Blacks, back then that's how it was said, the right to vote, or colored or whatever, then before women got the right to vote, that was somehow going to adversely affect women's rights.
Mm-hmm. Well, there was a thing about when it was the women's movement as a whole. But Black women were kind of left out of that in a way, because they also know bringing them in as a whole would make that struggle much harder. So it became one of those, let's get our rights for women and not focus on the race factor of it. And then we'll just deal with the race factor in it kind of on the back end, right? Without the acknowledgement at first that this needed to be women as a whole. This needed to be understood that this was all nationalities and of women, and that they were pulling together, but there was still that separation, especially in our man-led world, where, well, we're really looking at white women, so let's have that discussion. And they were leaving out everybody else. And that was very hard, because again, we're back at that same point where, yes, it happened and you got it as a whole, but it still was only recognized the way it was. And more as for white women. So that was very difficult in the Black community as well, because they're like, now we all have these rights, so now this is how it should be. But there still wasn't the equality, and there wasn't the systematic racism coming out of it. It wasn't getting rid of it. It was still happening in it. So that was kind of, it it could be a very sour point in that history, unfortunately, because it didn't always work in the favor of all the other nationalities as it was going through.
Right. Yes. And I've just been writing a course curriculum. And so in doing my research on the NAACP, that organization has been around for 113 years.
Wow.
So the struggle continues when we talk about struggle, and the more people we can have with better understanding and better compassion, exercising their empathy muscles, and maybe lifting a finger to do something about it along the way, then we all come out better. So
Yeah.
So I just Googled this because I didn't remember the exact date. So the women's right to vote was ratified in August 1920. So the NAACP has been around longer than that. So it predates women's right to vote. And yet white women got the right to vote. Yeah. So thank you for that, Melissa. I mean, what other white, I hate to call it white advocacy because it's not white advocacy,
right.
but being an advocate as a white person,
Yes.
for whatever marginalized group that we, or all of them.
Yeah.
What other types of things come up for you?
Well, and it's interesting. I listened to another podcast yesterday where there was an activism coach. So Omkari Williams, she guides people who are interested in activism through kind of finding their way, because there is so much, environmental, healthcare, voters' rights,
Right.
color lines, everything. So she helps people find their way and, what's good for their personality. If they're that out front person that, is up on a box on the street corner, or if they're more behind the scenes person, stuffing envelopes, writing thank you letters to donors for the organization. So it takes everyone. And, just as the collective, combining forces to get things done for the betterment of everyone. Kumbaya. That is that. So I'm blowing out my birthday candles every time. Woo, that's it, right?
That's awesome. And so you said Corey Williams?
Omkari Williams. Omkari. R-I.
Spell it again since I talked over you.
That's okay. Omkari. And she even has a quiz.
Awesome. All right. We'll try and find that and add it to the show notes. So thanks for adding that. Well, for bringing that up. That's awesome that somebody does that. Advocacy coaching. I love it.
Well, it makes sense because some people really want to be involved, but you're right. Their personality isn't that. I'm a highly outspoken, very mouthy kind of person where being out front for something like that, I have no problem with. But as a person, I'm very reserved and back behind the scenes and stuff and a lot of other things. So it really just depends on where you are in your heart, where that comes to things. And so many people behind the scenes are so necessary.
Absolutely. Lending that time and talent, yes, and the true heart, for sure. Yep.
Absolutely.
So much of what we do in our profession, the virtual assistant, virtual area, is behind the scenes. And I remember even when we were in corporate, even when I was in corporate, and I know, Laura, you've been in corporate too, that the first place they want to cut the budget is with their administrative support. And yet they want things to continue to work smoothly and operate smoothly. And that doesn't always happen.
And then forcing their leaders to become more overwhelmed with many, many hats. Struggle.
Yeah. The struggle's real, right?
Mhm.
So,
You
Melissa,
bring that. Oh, go ahead.
go ahead.
So you bring that up with their leaders, like you were discussing that. And in corporate, where there's a movement now towards inclusion and work culture and how that looks. I think the idea of leaders in corporate is definitely on the change as well. Realizing that managers weren't necessarily your leaders. They're the ones that have to keep everybody kind of in line, but your leaders were the ones that knew everyone, that knew how to handle every different personality in a group or a team. And I think with all the different things and movements coming in, I think that's a big one coming into corporate is a huge change about what leadership really looks like in all of this too. So
Yeah, I agree. Yes.
Melissa, we're about out of time. So I want to give you an opportunity to, if there's one message you want to get through today, and it doesn't have to be about the White Girl Advocacy. It can be about something in your business that you're excited about. But what's one thing you want to make sure that we talked about today?
Oh,
And I'm
wow.
springing this on her, so she's going to
Yes.
have to think really quickly on her feet because we didn't talk about this before.
So I think the message today is being present, being yourself, being a part of the greater good, to be a better neighbor, a better community member, better business owner, and just a better person to get by in the day to day.
Yeah, I love it.
I love
I
that,
do.
being a better person, because that just really is what it's about.
Yep.
Wonderful.
Awesome.
All
All right,
right.
Laura, hit it.
Hi. So Melissa is providing us with some great freebies and information, and it's really wonderful that she is offering this. So a business freebie is a decision-making guide. Get your small business humming, and we will put the link to that guide into the show notes, as well as a quiz that she has for us. Am I a racist? And I suggest that everybody go in and take that quiz.
Yeah.
You might surprise yourself. And I know we all have thoughts about who we are and what we don't want to be or maybe want to be, but I think it's informative and it's important to know where you're starting from. So I'm
Yeah.
super
I took one of
excited.
those somewhere else once before, and I was like, yeah, I want to take this because I know I'm not a racist.
Yeah, and don't be intimidated by it. It's really more introspective. So,
Yeah.
And we all need a
that's what we
starting
want.
point. You got to know where you're starting to know where you're going.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
So normally we have the guest introduce the next guest, but the next guest is me and Laura.
yes.
Next week we're going to talk about our struggles because we haven't done that yet. We haven't talked about what kind of brought us to creating the podcast and all that jazz. So that's what we're going to do next week. So Melissa, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm so sorry we had all these technical issues and we didn't get more time with you.
We'll definitely have you on again. So
yes, thank you so much for being here. And thank you guys for watching. Thank you for it looks like we've had a couple people pop in and out watching the live. So thanks for being here live. And be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel and click that notifications button so that you know when we go live. And we will see you guys next week. All right.
Great show. We look forward to seeing you next week. Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
How do I stop the live? I always forget how to do this. Shh, don't laugh at me. This is going to be the blooper reel for the end of this one. Somebody is still watching it and they're laughing their butts off at us right now. So how do I freaking stop the live? I have no idea. I really don't. So I'm just going to end the stream.
Okay.
Thanks, guys.
Thank
Bye,
you.
everyone.